Hello and welcome. I'm Smiley, and today we'll be talking about theology. I've noticed that the second that a brother or sister in Christ gets something wrong, or you have a difference of opinion or a difference in interpretation with another brother and sister in Christ, that automatically means that they're unsaved. It's like we have no grace for one another. There's no grace for our brothers and sisters in Christ sometimes. It gets to the point where it's not just wanting to correct somebody, it's completely disqualifying their faith. Despite what God is doing through them, despite what God has done through them, despite how God has used them, you disqualify their faith and you disqualify them as a brother and sister in Christ. But perfect theology does not get you to heaven. The fact that somebody listens to secular music does not disqualify them from being a brother and sister in Christ. And you have to get that. You have to get that. They could still be saved. They may be struggling with listening to secular music. They may be struggling with being a little bit in the world. But then you just warmly remind them. You don't get to disqualify somebody's faith. Disqualify somebody as a brother and sister in Christ and say, this person is obviously unsaved, etc., 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 just because they got one thing wrong. Instead, what we should be doing as a church is we should be praying for one another. Of course, you can mention it to the brother or sister where their discrepancy is or where they're getting something wrong, but do it out of love and do it respectfully, of course, and do it coming from a place of wanting to rectify somebody's relationship with God. And on a little bit of a side note, okay, I know that I said that this video is really just addressing the misconception that you have to have theology perfect in order to be saved. Outside of that misconception, let's just answer away from that for a second, right? And I talked about this in the video that I'm going to link at the end of this video. Make sure you go and watch it. But outside of the theology of it, think about how we look to the rest of the world. Think about how we look to the rest of the world. When we're always talking about grace, 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 extend grace. God gave me grace. I thank the Lord for his grace. Imagine how we look the second a brother or sister says something that's a little bit different, coming for their whole salvation, coming for their whole life. We look a little bit crazy. I think it's fair to assume that we look a little bit crazy, right? And the Bible actually talks about this. Put the verse on the screen, Smiley. Actually, I'm going to put two verses on the screen. So look at this verse. And now look at this verse. So we as a family also need to present to the rest of the world a little bit better. We need to be a little bit wiser about how we present to the world, about what we speak about in front of the world, and how we address problems with one another in front of the world. And since we're not perfect, extend a little bit of grace to your brothers and sisters in Christ, same way you want grace to be extended to you. And yeah, so that is everything that I wanted to say for this video. So as per usual, I am not going to do all that, but